Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. How about a project for us costumers? My favorite kind of project. We're going to make a two-strap belt. Now this design is going to make just about any costume from any era look good. Now it's a costume piece? Absolutely not. We're going to make a quality leathercraft project. Now if you're new to leathercraft or you're a costumer and want to jump in, this is a perfect beginning. We're going to take this one step at a time and it's going to look good. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com or check below. We've got links there. Going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So let's step over to our pattern table, get started. We've got a digital pic of our pattern. We'll look at that shortly, but we're going to talk about what we're doing first. That's going to help everything fall right into place. We're going to take this one step at a time. So let's start with our two belt straps. We're going to measure everything else out from those. Now we've got some great videos on measuring belts. Here's a crash course. This is called a shorty. It's not an industry term or tool. It's just something I've always used in my shop. But if we go this route, we're going to get a perfect fit every time, and it's easy to do. So I'll explain this. We've got two red lines here. I want my buckle to fall into that second hole. So I'm a 35-inch waist. I'm going to add 7 3/4 of an inch. All that is the distance here, 1 3/4, plus the distance here, 6 inches. So therefore my belt blank is going to be 42 3/4 of an inch long. So let's just go up to 43, round up. Now all I have to do when I cut my belt blank at 43 is take my shorty, I'm going to scoot it to one end, I'm going to mark for my rivet holes, and I'm going to scoot it to the other end and mark for my size holes. It literally is that easy. In fact, there's a shorty for a 1 1/2-inch belt. Now it's a little bit different because we're adding room for keepers here. All right, so on our pattern, we're going to add 3 additional holes to our blank so that we can secure this to our main body. Right here, we've got our 2 rivet holes to secure our buckle. We're going to come in 1 inch. All right, if we butt our blank to the other end, there's our measurements. From the inside hole, we're going to come in 2 inches. Now, all we'll do now is just drop a hole right in the middle between the two, okay? So we've got a feel for our strap. Let's step over to our main table, talk about the main body. There's a trick to making this belt work right. Here's what I'm talking about. So we've got our 3 rivet holes to secure this to our main body. So if we drop that down and we just punch and set rivets on all 3 of those, when we bend this belt around, this inside piece is going to bow in. That's simply too taut across the outside. Here's an easy fix. So right here, we've got our strap, we've got our 2 rivet holes to secure our buckle. Then we've come in 1 inch. That's our first rivet hole. We're going to drop that in. In fact, that's the only measurement on our pattern, and we'll look at that. That's 3 3/4 of an inch, so that when we rivet that together, our buckle has room to sit on top of the strap. So right here, let's come down, let's mark that, but then let's come in towards our buckle 1/4 of an inch. Let's mark and punch that. Down here, leave that where it is, same thing. Let's mark, but then come in 1/4 of an inch and punch our hole there. That means that when we put this on, or that before we put this on, it's going to have a little bit of a bow to it. Actually, that's what we're looking for. So when we put it on, this is going to be tight, just not too tight. One more point, an English punch, 4-inch. I have no idea if there's one out there. I've never seen one, but if there is, very expensive. We can cure this. All we have to do, let's take some poster board, 4 inches wide, scribe down the middle. Let's fold that over. From the bend, freehand or with a template, let's just cut that. Now we have a perfectly symmetrical English punch. All right, now over to our digital pick. So on our strapping, we talked about that, 43 inches by 1 inch. There's all of our measurements. Main body, we've got our 2 first holes there where we're going to start. We've got a wider keeper for the main body, the tongue on that. And then we've got 2 keepers simply for our straps. I think we're up to speed on this. I'm going to reset here. Let's cut some leather. Since we've got a lot of belt to deal with here, let's back up to a 7 to 8 ounce. If an 8 to 9 is all we have in our shop, that's absolutely going to work. Now, one of my all-time favorite cuts, the single shoulder. Great cut for us crafters. It's a quality piece of leather at an affordable price. The only downside to these, we're not going to get any length out of these. So we need to bump up to a double shoulder, or right here, a side. This is our Herman Oak, top of the line. One big point with this leather is when we step up to a quality tannage, our work's actually going to look better without any increase in our skills. Now, to save us a little time, I busted a straight edge into this. Our wooden strapper, this will work up to 4 inches, but that width, I'd prefer to cut that just by hand. So let's take our pattern, make sure we avoid right up to the edge, but right here, let's just scribe. And then down here, line that up and scribe here. Let's put in our English point. But then right up here, I'm just going to come in just a little bit on either side. There we go. Now let's cut from that. So new blade, sharp blade every time. Let's cut this piece out. And there we are. Now, we could round corner our ends right here, but let's just clip off that corner. There we go. Okay, I'm going to reset here. Let's cut our straps. One of the best things about a side of leather, the sheer length. This is over 8 feet long, so I actually can get both pattern pieces end to end. Now, leather, quantity deal. The more we buy at one time, the better price per foot. So let's step over to our wooden strap cutter, one of the best, most useful tools in our shop. I'm going to bring that down to 1 inch. Good. Let's give that a little extra tight. Now we need 2 straps here at 1 inch. And we've got that. So let's trim these to size. Good. Okay. Let's mark all of our holes from our pattern. We've got those 2 straps marked, and over to our main strap, let's mark all 6 holes here. Okay, we've got that. Let's step over to our punch table, punch our round holes, oblong, and English point. We're going to use 2 different size holes with our revolving punch. That may seem like we're splitting hairs, but the point is, I want a smaller hole for our rivet holes. If our post is a little bit snug in that hole, that's going to give us our best bite. But then down here, for our size holes, we're going to need a little bit larger hole for the buckle prong. So let's start here. I'm going to go up on our revolving punch. In fact, this is a great punch. It's a compound action punch. Makes it much easier on our forearm. So with this, let's go up to, I might say, about maybe the 2nd or 3rd tube, and we're going to punch our rivet holes. All right, we've got our rivet holes on our straps. Let's do the same thing over here on our main body. We've got those holes punched, okay. Back over to our straps. Let's go all the way up to the largest hole on our revolving. Now we're going to punch our 6 size holes. And those look good. Now, if you can figure out a use for these little things, you will be the hero of the leather working community. Now over to an English punch. We've got a 1 inch strap, 1 inch English punch. Now I'm going to do this reverse because if I flip this around, punch it, the belt's going to slip right off the table. So let's do our best to even that. And I just want to see a little daylight inside of each wing. There we go. Okay, we've got that. Let's flip these around. Now on this end, we don't have to, but let's add a round end punch. It's a nice touch, and again, 1 inch. And we've got that. Last point here. Typically, the rule of thumb, if we've got a 1 inch strap, we're going to go with a 1 inch oblong. But right here, we've got a good bit of prong there. So what I'd like to do is step that up a little bit. So I'm going to go up to a 1 1/4 inch. Now, it's a little bit of an obscure size for us to have in our shop. But what we can do is simply take our 1 inch, center it, and then step it out, punch, step it out, and punch. We can absolutely use the smaller oblong. And we've got that. Okay, 2 good oblongs. Let's go back to our main table. We've got 2 more pieces to cut. Then we're going to do some edge work. We're going to need 3 keepers here. So right here, we'll cut 2 at 1/2 inch by 4 inches. That will be the keeper for our tongues on our straps. Our third, and we only need to cut 1 here, is going to be 3/4 of an inch by 8 1/4 of an inch. We're going to rivet that between our strap and our main body. We'll circle around behind, bring it up, and then we'll rivet it the same way on the other side. That will be the keeper for the larger body. It's going to keep it in there comfortable. Now over here, love a 4 to 5 ounce for my keepers. This is one of the 2 weights I always have in my shop, so I've always got it. This is simply a scrap. Now for this larger keeper, I'd like a little more weight to that. Well, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, almost never have those weights in my shop. Well, here's a good answer to that. This is called a belly. Very inexpensive piece of leather. The great thing here, we can keep those obscure weights in our shop without having a lot of money on the shelf. So let's go with maybe a 5/6 or 6/7 here. So with this piece on our 4 to 5, I need to cut 2 at 4 inch by 1/2 inch. So let's take this out of our scrap 4 to 5 ounce and let's cut to size. We've got that. Now, on our punch, again, we're going to go down to a smaller tube because we'll be using a rivet down here. So let's just punch those in right towards the end of the strap. Good, we've got that. Now, that's a little bit larger hole than I would like, but that's going to work for us. So over here, with this, let's go 8 1/4 by 3/4. And 8 1/4. Okay, we've got that. And again, let's just punch a hole right at the very end. Good, we've got that. Let's reset, do our edge work. The primary job of a groover is to sink a groove line down the edge of our leather for our chisel, for our stitch line. But I use this on every edge because it makes our edges look absolutely finished and professional. So on our keepers, small keepers, I'm not going to worry about those. But the wider, I'm going to set this in 1/8 of an inch. Now this is adjustable, but I like to set it in 1/8 and leave it there. To me, that's a good distance in from the edge, but not too far. So with this, all we have to do, we're going to butt the guide arm against the edge of the leather, and I'm going to give this a little counterclockwise pressure. And that's all it is. Does not take a lot to get the feel of this tool. Let's do the other side. Got that? Okay, so on our straps here, I'm going to go all the way around on all 3. And there we are. Well, that looks good. A noticeable difference in our edge, absolutely. Now, one point here. It's always tough to go around a small round end with our groover. Well, how about we just run straight off the end? Because to me, no groove looks better than a bad groove, okay? So now we're going to step over to an edger. This is a number 2. This is good for 7 to 8, 8 to 9, and 9 to 10. So let's go all the way around on all 3 pieces. And there we are. One more trick here again. Just like our groover, it can be a little tough to try to get a good edge around a smaller strap with a round end if we don't worry about it. Well, first off, that's going to bend around. Nobody's going to see that. But again, no groove or no edge looks better than a bad one. Okay, so over to our main body, same thing. Good, there we go. We've got a nice groove and a nice bevel all the way around. Let's reset here. We're going to add some dye because we are getting close to knocking this together. We're going to go with our Pro dye. It's the only dye I use. We can't go wrong with this. Now the downside, we're going to go with light brown. I simply use that in too many videos, but in my defense, this is going to be beautiful. So we'll go with our light brown. Then we'll come back in with an antique. That's going to bring that color down just a little bit, but it's also going to sink down in our groove lines, and we'll hit our edges with that. We'll finish that out with black roller buckles, black rivets. This is going to look good. Now we're ready to dye, but here's a cool trick. Let's do this. Let's step over to our marble. Let's put in 2 quick rivets. Then we'll wet form our keepers. We're going to use double cap rivets for our projects, and much like our dye, that's just about the only rivet I use, and for so many reasons. We've got this in multiple finishes. Now with our double caps, we've got 3 sizes. We've got a 1/4 inch, a 5/16, and a 7/16. We'll see those 2 larger sizes here shortly, but we're going to go with the smallest size. Now right here, this is our 4-piece setter set, worth every penny. We can set rivets, line 24 snaps, line 20 snaps, and segment snaps. But one of the most helpful pieces in that pack, the anvil, because now we can set keepers. So let's put a rivet post down. Let's bring our keeper around and a cap, and let's set that. Good, we've got those set. Now in all honesty, doesn't really matter what rivet color we go with, and we'll see that here in just a second. I am bad about making keepers, and I don't know why. I either keep putting it off or I forget about them completely. I get my project done. Now I got to back up, make a keeper, let the dye dry. Here's an easy fix to this. We can make forms for our keepers. This does a couple of things. Well, first off, we can make multiple keepers and wet form these onto our form. The cool thing there is that gives us a very square, very professional keeper. When we need one, we take it off and we simply dye it in whatever color we're working with. So all told, on the back, the rivet doesn't really matter. Well, first off, we're probably not going to see that, but we can make these forms out of just about anything. I like the plywood, but right there, if we don't have plywood or the capabilities to cut, that is simply 2 pieces of 8 to 9. I've used contact cement, and then on the exterior, I've used our pattern sheeting. That's actually a pretty sturdy little form. So we'll dye our keepers, and then we'll work those onto our 1-inch form. Well, let's start right there. So I'm going to use some, this is just simple wire from any hardware store. I like to make hooks because we can use this to drag our project through our dye. But then, if we have a place in our shop, we can just hang those up and let them dry. So let's get 1 keeper dyed. Now with the lighter weights, I don't want to leave that in the dye too long because it's going to suck up too much dye. Okay, we've got that. Let's form that onto our 1-inch. Good. Now with our fingers, let's press our corners. Let's make that good and square. Good. Let's let that dry. I'm going to do the same thing to this one. Good, there we are. Those are molded onto our form. Let's just set that aside and let that dry. Now over to our other straps. I'm just going to run these through our dye, set them aside. Now this is the paper. If you order some leather from Weaver, this is what it will come packed in. I love this. Now I've got a paper or a plastic trash bag underneath to protect my work surface, but this will absorb the dye. If we dye on this, it's an absolute mess. So let's run this through and tap off the excess dye. One of the great things about Pro Dye, we set that aside, we walk away. So now I'm going to dye these straps same way. Good, we've got that. Let's just tap off the excess. And again, let's just lay that down and walk away. Now I'm going to do the same thing to this strap and our main body, but over here on our main body, our hole is much further in. Let's just make a longer hook. And our big piece is dyed. Let's just leave those alone. And I'm going to give those about 2.5, maybe 3 hours dry time. Now, we're definitely going to use more dye when we dip dye. But buying dye by the quart is the best way to go. Most cost effective because really I only use about 4 colors of dye in my shop. So it's not too bad to buy the quarts. And clean up with the Pro Dye, very easy. I've got a small funnel. Makes it easy to get that back in the bottle. A couple of paper towels. We're ready to dye again. So I'm going to do some cleanup. Let's give these about 3 hours dry time. We've given our belts about 2.5 hours and everything looks good. So dyeing leather, 2 big points, doesn't have to be time consuming or messy. In fact, we've got very little dye even on our paper. Well, now we're going to switch over to an antique. This is the opposite of dye. It is time consuming and it's an absolute mess. So on that point, let's do this. We're going to add some painter's tape to the back of our straps. Now we can go with packing tape or masking tape. We just want to protect the back because again, this can be a mess. So right here on our 2 straps, these are 1 inch, 1 inch. That's an easy one. But on our larger body here, it would be best to tape the entire thing. But really, let's just hit the edges. And if we're even a little bit careful with the antique, we'll be fine. So let's add tape to all 3 pieces. On this, we don't have to be exactly to the edge. In fact, I noticed right here, we're a little bit in. But as long as we've got a consistent line across there, that'll look good. So let's trim our tape. We've got that. All right, let's set up to add some antique. We haven't even started the project and I'm already making a mess. We'll get used to that. I mentioned we're going to go with a medium brown. Well, let's step down to a dark brown. We're going to use black hardware. So this is going to look good in the groove lines and on the edges. And on our keepers, we're not going to worry about tape there. In fact, right here, we'll just add antique and top coat while that's on our form. So let's start here. I'm just going to take a simple cotton rag. We'll work our antique across first. Then we'll come back with a dauber and work that into our groove lines. Okay, we've got that on the surface. Now let's come back with a dauber and work that antique down into the grooves. Okay, well that looks good. The groove lines do stand out. Now let's come back and hit our edge. Good, we've got our edges. Let's clean those off. Run our rag back across that. Well, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to do the same thing to our 2 straps, our main body, and our keepers. And our last little section. Well, that looks good, and on our back, we didn't do too badly. Now, 2 big points here. First off, if we've got areas where it doesn't look like we got enough antique, we can always come back in because it's not going to get any darker than it is. But also, rivet holes, not so much a problem. But over here on our size holes, it's almost a better idea to punch these after we antique, simply because the antique can sit down in those and it won't dry very well. It's going to come out on our buckle prong. So everything is antiqued. Let's leave this here for about 45 minutes, give that some dry time. Then we'll add our top coat. Let's go with one of my two favorite top coats, the leather balm. We use this in almost every video because first off, I'm not big on high gloss. It's going to give us a little bit of gloss, but not much. The best part here, it's really going to enrich this dye color. Now, typically with the dye, I say the quart, best way to go, most cost-effective way. But with the leather balm, this goes a long way. So I might say for us crafters, the smaller, the 4-ounce, might be the best route. So I'm going to use two rags here. I've got a fleece. Love the fleece because it's going to hold a lot of the balm. We can cover a larger area. But then we're going to let that dry. I'll do all the pieces. Then we'll come back over, and with a simple cotton rag, we're just going to buff. So right here, let's start on our larger piece. And again, I want to go very sparingly. Now, one thing we want to avoid, streaks and bubbles, because those will definitely stand out. But let's just work our way evenly down our belt. Good, we've got that piece done. Now let's set that aside, and I'm going to do the balance of our pieces, including our keepers. Okay, we've applied to our keepers. Let's set those aside. Let's come back over to our wide belt. Now let's just buff this out. Yeah, there we go. We can already start to see that. That looks good. Good. Now down here, it looks like I re-wet my rag. As I move through here, what we can do, let's just come in and again, very sparingly, lightly. Let's work across that spot. And now let's buff that back out. That should take care of any streaks that we have. Good, that looks nice. Now, one more step. Let's come back and let's hit our edge. We're not going to slick our edges, but this is going to darken that edge just a little bit more. Good. And a little bit across the end. All right. Let's take our tape off. There we go. Now that can give us a little bit of fuzz from the tape. Not really an issue. We can press that right back down. Well, very good. I'm going to do the same thing to the rest of the pieces. And there we are. Even our keepers look good. Very nice. Now let's make sure we take our tape off. I've only forgotten that a few times, but let's take every bit of this, step over to our punch table. Let's knock this beautiful belt together. We're going to use our double caps, but now for our 2-ply, like right here on our bend back or down on our main body, we're going to go with the medium, or technically the 5/16. That's perfect for 2 8-9s back to back. But right here, we're going to have 3-ply. We'll have our strap, our keeper, and our main body. So there we're going to jump up to the large, or the 7/16 inch. So let's start right here. Let's take our buckle, and I want to make sure my prong curls over the roller. So let's put that in. And there we are. Bend that back around. Go with a medium, and this is just one rivet hole here. We're just adding one rivet. Love this about the double caps. We can snap that together without setting it. So therefore we can move a project around, or we can test the size. And this belt's a great example. So if we want to, let's go ahead and set this. But with the balance of the 3 rivets, let's just snap those together. We can put the belt on and see if everything fits, particularly how much distance there is between the holes here and the holes on the main body. Again, we want that a little bit snug but not too tight. Okay, back to our rivet setter from our 4-piece set. Good. Ah, love that. The brown, that actually is a beautiful color with our edge and our black hardware. I'm going to do the same thing here. And if we let the bend back hang off of our marble just a little bit, it gives that bend room and we can get a good flat set. Now don't forget our keepers. I am notorious about this. So let's slide these on. Okay, those are going to go inside of this first rivet hole. Now, on our large, let's start on one side. I'm going to come through from our body, from the back of our body, then to our keeper, and now over to our strap. So let's set this. Good. Now let's bring that around. Come up from the back again with a large or a 7/16 inch. Let's drop our keeper on that. We may have to pull it a little tight. That's okay. We've got a good fit there. So right there, that's going to rivet down like that. That gives us just enough room for the other end of this tip to slide through. Now let's drop our strap onto that. Let's snap a cap on it. Good. Now let's take our anvil again and let's slide up under that rivet. Now let's set that. One more good shot. Well, that looks good thus far. Very nice. So down here I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to use our medium or our 5/16 inch rivet. And we've got those, and there's that bow. Very nice. I'm going to set the last two the same way. And there we are. In fact, right there, we've got a little extra room just in case we're going to bring that buckle all the way to the inside hole. Well, let's take a look at this, then we'll see how it fits. That's a good looking belt with costumes. It's all about the details. This is going to make anything look good. Love the combination of the brown, the antique, and the hardware. On our strapping, it's a little bit tight, but not too much. That's what we want. Great place for a dagger, a dirk, or maybe to tie a pouch. All told, I am really happy with the way this came out. Now for our new folks, nothing here has been difficult, but it doesn't look that way. All right, so let's see how it fits. We've got a good looking belt here, and it feels good. Well, it should. It's a quality leathercraft project. We didn't cut any corners, and this is going to make just about any costume from any era look great. Now, I've got to touch on this because we've got a bit of a fail here. I'm on the third hole and not the second hole. Well, it's a nuance, and this will stretch out a little bit just with time and use. But what I did was calculate my waist size on my jeans and not my costume. So mental note to self, let's put on our costume, then we determine our waist size, make our belt, and then we'll have a perfect fit every time. I hope you have a great time making your two-strap belt, and I hope it comes out beautifully. Good luck with your projects.